President Biden's abnormal social welfare and climate change bill is poised to raise taxes on the middle class, while giving lucrative breaks for the super wealthy, according to a new study. Nearly 30% of lower and middle class households would pay more in taxes starting next year if the bill became law, according to the study by the liberal-leaning Tax Policy Center, a project of the Brookings Institution and Urban Institute. The report is an in-depth analysis of the tax increases that House Democrats want to see included in the multi-trillion-dollar legislation. Although the tax increases start small, they grow massively by the end of the decade. Meanwhile, the report found that two-thirds of millionaires would see tax cuts if the cap on the SALT and local deduction, or SALT, is raised from $10,000 to $80,000. Howard Gleckman, a senior fellow at the Tax Policy Center said, "Analyzing the House Democrats' plan is especially complicated because the effective dates of its many tax provisions vary widely. Joe Biden and House Democrats have proposed a wide array of new taxes, spanning from Wall Street to Main Street, to pay for the social welfare package. The proposals amount to one of the most extensive tax hikes in recent history. The White House has sought to characterize the hikes as targeting only the super wealthy and corporations to the benefit of everyone else." Joe Biden said, "We need to build America from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down with the trickle-down economics that's always failed us. All I'm asking is, pay your fair share." The Tax Policy Center's study blows a hole in that narrative, however. It indicates that tax proposals championed by House Democrats break a key pledge Joe Biden made on the 2020 campaign trail, not to raise taxes on households making below $400,000 annually. The menu of hikes proposed by House Democrats ranges from doubling the federal tobacco tax to more than $2 per pack to a 15% flat tax on corporate profits. The latter applies to companies that publicly report more than $1 billion in profits over 3 years. Also tucked into the package is a 15% tax on the foreign earnings of corporations and a 1% surcharge on companies that buy back their own stock. Apart from corporate tax hikes, the White House is proposing a series of taxes on the rich. Joe Biden is backing a 5% wealth tax on individuals with an adjusted gross income above $10 million. The figure jumps to 8% on adjusted gross incomes over $25 million. It is estimated to raise $230 billion over the next decade. Despite the proposed increases, the Tax Policy Center found that under the House Democrats' plan, roughly two-thirds of individuals making $1 million annually would get a tax cut. The average cut for millionaires is upwards of $16,800. That feat is accomplished by raising the cap on the state and local deduction from $10,000 to $80,000. SALT allows individuals annually to write off a portion of their state and local taxes. The lucrative tax break is used by residents from predominantly Democratic coastal areas, where the state and local tax burdens are especially high. Former President Trump's 2017 tax overhaul capped the deduction at $10,000 annually. Moderate House Democrats, mainly from the northeastern and western United States, have lobbied heavily to raise it to $80,000. Mr. Gleckman said, "Raising the cap to $80,000 would not matter at all for the vast majority of households. But it would cut 2021 taxes for the top 1%. The Tax Policy Center's report comes as Congress plans to return to Washington next week to continue debate on Joe Biden's social welfare bill. Last week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's push to pass the measure was upended by a cadre of moderates from her own Democratic majority. The moderates, led by Democratic Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, said they are unable to vote for the more than 2,000-page bill until its cost can be ascertained by the Congressional Budget Office. Mr. Gottheimer said, "The responsible thing to do when you get a piece of legislation like this is to do a full analysis and to understand the impact on your district and the families in your district, and that's what I'm looking at." Republicans agree, with some conservative groups even accusing Mrs. Pelosi, a California Democrat, of attempting to push through the measure without proper transparency as to its true cost. Calvin Moore, a spokesman for the GOP-leaning American Action Network said, "Nancy Pelosi is backing up a dump truck full of money for handouts to her cronies and is sticking middle-class families with the bill. The more we learn about this plan, the worse it gets. No wonder Washington liberals refuse to tell the truth about it. The Federal Appeals Court on Thursday temporarily blocked the release of former President Donald Trump's White House records to the House committee investigating the January 6. A three-judge panel for the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit granted President Trump's emergency motion for an injunction to halt the National Archives from releasing the records at 6 p.m. Friday. The court also scheduled arguments in the case for November 30, which will take place before three judges appointed by Democrats, Patricia Millett and Robert Wilkins, both Obama appointees, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, a Biden appointee. The former president's call logs and draft speeches are among the documents that the committee was set to receive as part of its probe into the January 6 event. President Trump sued the committee and the National Archives in D.C. federal court on October 18 after Joe Biden waived executive privilege on the records. President Trump argues that he has the right to executive privilege as a former president. United States District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan denied his request for an injunction on Tuesday, writing, "Presidents are not kings, and plaintiff is not president." She also rejected his emergency motion to halt the release of the records pending his appeal. President Trump appealed to the appeals court on Wednesday and asked the court on Thursday for an administrative injunction and to delay any ruling on the case until next week. The filing states, "Absent judicial intervention, President Trump will suffer irreparable harm through the effective denial of a constitutional and statutory right to be fully heard on a serious disagreement between the former and incumbent president." The White House on Thursday also told a lawyer for Mark Meadows, President Trump's former chief of staff, that Biden plans to waive any executive privilege that would prohibit Mark Meadows from cooperating with the committee. His attorney, George Terwilliger, however, said Mr. Meadows still remains under the instructions of former President Trump to respect long-standing principles of executive privilege, and that it now appears the courts will have to resolve this conflict. In a letter sent to Terwilliger, Committee Chairman Representative Benny Thompson, Mississippi Democrat, said there is no legal basis for Mr. Meadows to defy the subpoena, and if he does, the committee would consider holding him in contempt of Congress. If Thompson is found to be in contempt, the committee could send a referral to the DOJ for criminal charges against him.